The research vessel Horizon drifted alongside the enormous abandoned spacecraft. The ship's engines hummed quietly as it matched the derelict's slow tumble through the empty void. Through the viewport, the mysterious vessel looked like a massive metal whale, its dark hull scarred by countless impacts from space debris over what must have been centuries. Team leader Daeho double-checked the seal on his breathing apparatus. His heartbeat quickened with anticipation. After 15 years of searching for significant artifacts, this could be the discovery that defined his career. "Everyone ready?" he asked, looking at his 5-person team. They nodded, their expressions a mixture of excitement and apprehension visible behind their helmet visors. "Initial scans complete," Director, said Hana. She brushed her short hair away from her eyes as she studied the readouts on her wrist computer. The structure appears to be at least 3,000 years old. No power signatures detected. Hull integrity is surprisingly stable, but atmosphere readings show no breathable air inside. "Excellent work," Daeho replied, unable to hide his smile. "This could be the find of our careers. The Council will be pleased." The Galactic Research Council rarely approved expeditions to this remote region of space. Resources were tight, and most officials preferred to focus on known territories. But when long-range sensors had detected an anomalous object drifting silently through the outer reaches of the Cygnus sector, Daeho had fought hard for the opportunity to investigate. His persistence had paid off beyond his wildest expectations. "Structure is unlike anything in our database," said Junseo, the team's engineer. "The design principles don't match any known civilization." Daeho nodded. "That's what makes this so valuable. Let's proceed with boarding." The team moved into the airlock of their shuttlecraft. The outer door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, and the air pressure equalized. Daeho led the way across the short gap of open space between their ship and the derelict, using his suit's thrusters to guide himself to the alien vessel's entry point. "Cutting team, you're up," he said as they all gathered at what appeared to be an airlock. 2 team members moved forward with laser cutters. The ancient metal resisted initially, but eventually yielded. As the circular piece of hull fell away, their helmet lights illuminated the darkness beyond. Dust particles danced in their beams like tiny stars. The air inside was still, undisturbed for millennia until this moment. Daeho felt a shiver run down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold. They were the first beings to enter this ship in thousands of years. "Move carefully," he instructed. "Document everything." The corridor they entered was narrow, designed for beings not much different in size from themselves. The walls were lined with what might have been control panels, now dark and lifeless. Their footsteps echoed hollowly as they proceeded deeper into the vessel. "These markings are fascinating," said Sangme, running her gloved fingers over symbols etched into a bulkhead. "This appears to be some form of alphanumeric script." She pointed to a sequence of characters that stood out from the rest. UNSC Valiant. It's repeated throughout the ship. Must be some primitive religious iconography, perhaps the name of a deity their culture worshipped. "Or the name of the ship," suggested Minho, earning a skeptical look from Sangme. They continued their exploration, moving deeper into the vessel. In what appeared to be a central chamber, they made their most startling discovery: the preserved remains of bipedal beings in strange uniforms. "Incredible preservation," whispered Hana, carefully scanning one of the bodies. "The vacuum and cold must have prevented decomposition." Yumho, their historian, moved to what appeared to be a control station. Carefully, he collected a strange rectangular object that was unlike anything they had encountered before. "Look at this," he said, holding it up. "Some kind of data storage device, perhaps." This civilization was clearly primitive. They used physical interfaces rather than neural links. "See these raised portions? I believe they pressed them with their digits to input commands." "Fascinating," Daeho said, examining the device. "The Council will want to study all of this thoroughly. We'll need to bring the entire relic back to Central Station." "Are you certain that's wise?" asked Junseo. "Something this size will be difficult to tow." The discovery is too important to leave here, Daho insisted. Prepare the towing equipment. We'll begin the process immediately. For the next several hours, the team worked to secure special gravitational tethers to the derelict vessel. They placed beacons at strategic points along its hull to help stabilize it during transport. "Tethers secure," reported Junseo finally. "We're ready to begin towing whenever you give the word." "Excellent," said Daho. "Let's depart. I want to be back at Central Station within the week." As the team returned to their own vessel, none of them noticed the faint blue glow that briefly illuminated a hidden panel deep within the ship's core. The light flickered once, twice, then became steady. In the darkness, ancient systems began a silent reboot sequence. A soft electronic voice spoke into the empty corridor where, moments before, the alien researchers had stood. Emergency power restored. Initiating basic systems check. Detecting unknown entities. Beginning defensive protocols. Deep within the ship's memory banks, dormant programs awakened. Sensors that had slept for millennia began collecting data again. Slowly, methodically, the vessel assessed its situation. The USC Valiant was awakening, and the beings who had presumed it a mere relic were about to discover just how wrong they had been. The emergency alarms echoed through Central Station's research bay, their shrill wail cutting through the usual quiet hum of scientific equipment. Red warning lights flashed across the curved white walls. Researchers abandoned their workstations, looking around in confusion and fear. "The power consumption is off the charts," Jae-won shouted, her fingers flying across her monitoring terminal. The young energy systems specialist had been tracking the relic's minimal power fluctuations for 3 weeks since they'd brought it back. What had started as tiny, almost undetectable pulses had suddenly spiked dramatically. "That's impossible," muttered her supervisor, checking the readings himself. "It's drawing more power than our main fusion reactor produces." 3 weeks had passed since the expedition team had proudly brought their discovery back to Central Station. The ancient vessel had been carefully positioned in the largest research bay, surrounded by monitoring equipment and curious scientists. What had been a scientific curiosity was now becoming a growing concern as the supposedly dead ship began showing signs of activity. Daho was in a budget meeting when his emergency communicator buzzed. He excused himself immediately and ran the entire way to the research bay, his heart pounding in his chest. As he burst through the doors, he saw chaos. Researchers ran in all directions, some grabbing emergency equipment, others hurriedly backing up data. He arrived just as the lights on the ancient vessel flickered to life. A low hum filled the air as systems dormant for millennia began to power up. Massive doors that had resisted all attempts at entry suddenly sealed with a pneumatic hiss. "Director," called a panicked voice. "Sang Mei and 2 technicians are trapped inside." Daho's blood ran cold. Sang Mei had been mapping the interior corridors with 2 junior technicians. They had been scheduled to document the ship's bridge area today. "Get them out of there," he ordered, rushing to the monitoring station. "Cut the power supply to the bay." "We already tried," Jae-won responded, her face pale. "It's not drawing power from us anymore. It's generating its own." Inside the vessel, Sang Mei froze as holographic displays suddenly activated around her. The dead corridor came alive with blue light, illuminating the metal walls with an eerie glow. The 2 technicians with her pressed themselves against the wall, their eyes wide with fear. "What's happening?" one of them whispered. Before Sang Mei could answer, the air in front of them shimmered. A figure materialized, a female of the same species as the remains they'd found. The hologram wore a similar uniform to the dead crew, but hers was pristine, unmarked by time. Her short hair was nearly styled, and her posture was rigid and alert. "Systems restored to 38% capacity," announced a disembodied voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Commander Park protocol initiated." The hologram regarded Sang Mei with cool assessment. Its eyes moved with a startling lifelike quality, tracking her movements precisely. "You are not human," It stated in a clear, commanding voice. Identify yourself and explain your presence aboard the UNSC Valiant. Sang-mi swallowed hard, her years of linguistic training failing her in the moment. I am Dr. Sang-mi of the Galactic Research Council. We found your vessel adrift and brought it to our station for study. The hologram's eyes narrowed. Scanning. Unknown species detected. Potential threat assessment in progress. On the research station, the scientists watched in horror through the monitoring cameras as the supposedly ancient relic began humming with power. Systems they had carelessly labeled as decorative or ceremonial were coming online one by one. What are those components doing? Daho demanded, pointing to a section of the ship they had identified as possibly aesthetic in purpose. Young-ho, who had been analyzing the ship's external features, looked up from his datapad with a face drained of color. Those aren't decorative elements, he said quietly. They're weapon ports. As if responding to his words, panels along the ship's hull slid open smoothly despite their age. Metallic components extended and pivoted, aligning themselves with precise movements toward key parts of the research station. It's not a relic, whispered Young-ho, backing away from the viewport. It's still alive. Inside the ship, the hologram circled Sang-mi slowly. Your biometric signatures indicate heightened stress. Are you capturers? Scavengers? No, Sang-mi said quickly, finding her voice. We are researchers, explorers. We study ancient civilizations. We believe your ship was empty. Abandoned. The hologram paused. Time since last crew activity. According to our dating methods, approximately 3,000 years, Sang-mi replied. Something like surprise flashed across the hologram's face. 3,000 years, it repeated. Running system verification. Confirmed. Hibernation protocol has maintained minimal functions for 3,047 standard years. Outside, Daho watched helplessly as the ship's weapons remained trained on the station. Can we communicate with them? He asked desperately. The internal comms are still active, Jai-1 replied. But something's blocking our transmission signals. Threat assessment completed, the hologram announced suddenly. Non-human entities do not match known enemy profiles, initiating first contact protocols. The weapons systems remained deployed but did not fire. Instead, a communication channel opened on all frequencies. This is the automated command system of the United Nations Space Command Vessel Valiant, a voice announced throughout the station. Your civilization has awakened this vessel from emergency hibernation protocol. Identify yourselves and your intentions. Daho rushed to the communication terminal. This is Director Daho of the Galactic Research Council, he responded, trying to keep his voice steady. We mean no harm. We discovered your vessel and brought it here for historical research. We did not know it was still functional. There was a long pause. Historical research, the ship's voice repeated. You believe this was a dead vessel? Yes, Daho confirmed. All our readings indicated it was powerless. We found remains aboard. We assumed everyone was dead. Another pause. Remains will be those of emergency crew. Most personnel were transferred to digital storage before final power conservation protocols. The scientists exchanged confused glances. Digital storage? Young-ho asked. The hologram inside the ship turned to Sang-mi. I am Commander Park, Tactical Officer of the UNSC Valiant. Or rather, I am her consciousness, preserved within the ship's memory core. And you have awakened us from a very long sleep. The main conference room of Central Station buzzed with nervous energy. Around the large oval table sat 12 scientists and station officials, their attention fixed on the glowing blue figure standing at the center of the table. The hologram was so detailed that it cast faint shadows on the table surface. My name is Commander Park Sun-hee of the United Nations Space Command. The hologram explained, its voice calm and clear. My consciousness was preserved within the Valiant systems when we made our last stand. 2 days had passed since the warship had awakened. The initial panic had slowly given way to cautious dialogue after Commander Park had allowed Sangmei and the other trapped researchers to leave the ship safely. The weapons systems remained active, but had been repositioned to a non-threatening stance. Daho leaned forward in his chair, studying the holographic human with undisguised fascination. "You must understand our shock," he said. "Nothing in our records suggested your vessel contained living consciousness." "I am not precisely alive in the biological sense," Park clarified. "But my memories, personality, and decision-making capabilities were transferred to the ship's systems before my physical death. It was an experimental procedure, only performed on key personnel." Hannah raised her hand tentatively. "Why? Why preserve yourselves this way?" The hologram's expression changed subtly, showing what might have been sadness. "Because we were losing. Because someone needed to remember." Daho cleared his throat. "This brings us to a difficult topic, Commander. Your species, humans, are considered mythological by most modern civilizations. According to our historical records, you were eliminated during the Great Purge, nearly 3,000 years ago." Murmurs spread around the table. Many had studied the Great Purge in school, the ancient conflict that had supposedly wiped out several primitive species and established the current galactic order. "Not eliminated," Park corrected firmly. "Scattered. Hiding. The Valiant contains a seed bank of human genetic material and cultural archives. We were meant to preserve our species until it was safe to return." The scientists exchanged shocked glances. "You mean?" Young Ho began. "I mean the humanity planned for its apparent defeat," Park continued. "Ships like the Valiant were sent to the far reaches of known space, programmed to hide and hibernate until certain conditions were met." "What conditions?" asked Jai-1. "Detection by a non-hostile species," Park replied, nodding toward Daho. "Your arrival triggered our awakening protocols." Young Ho stepped forward from where he had been standing against the wall. The young historian clutched his data pad nervously. "The beings who supposedly destroy humanity. We call them the Dominion. They rule most of known space now, claiming they've always been the dominant civilization. Our people, the Nari, are one of dozens of protected species under their authority." Park's hologram flickered, the blue light intensifying briefly. The change seemed to reflect emotion, what looked remarkably like anger. "They lied," Park said, her voice hardening. "The Dominion was just one faction in a much larger conflict. They weren't even the strongest, but they were the most ruthless." A hologram raised its hand, and a three-dimensional star map appeared above the table. Certain systems glowed red. "These were human colonies," Park explained. "Hundreds of worlds, a civilization that spanned nearly a quarter of the galaxy. We weren't primitive. Our technology was advancing rapidly, too rapidly for the Dominion's comfort. But our archaeological findings," began one of the scientists, "were allowed to exist by the Dominion," Park finished. "They'd been suppressing evidence of human advancement for millennia, while simultaneously borrowing our technology for themselves." The star map changed, showing battle movements. "In the final days, we knew we couldn't win through conventional warfare, so we devised the Scattered Seed Protocol. We hid ships throughout the galaxy, each containing everything needed to eventually rebuild human civilization. Then we made it appear as though we had been completely destroyed." Daho stood up slowly. "This is difficult to accept. Everything we've been taught was written by the victors," Park said softly, "or rather, by those who merely claimed victory." Sangmei, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "The Dominion enforces strict technology restrictions on all member species. They claim it's for our protection, to prevent us from developing weapons that could destabilize the galaxy." "They fear competition," Park replied. "They always have." Young Ho's face showed growing anger. "They've kept us dependent, limited. My people have been trying to develop improved faster-than-light travel for generations, but the technology always seems just out of reach. The Dominion claims it's physically impossible to go beyond certain speeds. It's not, Park said simply. The Valiant could outrun their fastest ships, even 3,000 years ago. The scientists began talking all at once, years of accepted knowledge crumbling before their eyes. Daho raised his hands for quiet. If what you say is true, he said carefully, then the implications are enormous. But we need proof beyond your word. Park nodded. Access my ship's database. You'll find. As if on cue, alarms throughout the station began to wail, cutting off her words. Red emergency lights began flashing, and the station's automatic voice announced a proximity alert. Jai-1 rushed to a terminal, her fingers moving rapidly across the controls. Her face paled as she read the incoming data. Incoming transmission, she announced, looking up with fear in her eyes. It's a Dominion battle group, 7 ships, heavily armed. They're demanding we surrender the ancient artifact immediately. The room fell silent. Park's hologram stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable. How did they know? Whispered Daho. We haven't even filed our official report yet. They've been monitoring for awakening vessels for thousands of years, Park said quietly. The moment the Valiant's systems fully activated, they would have detected the energy signature. What do they want? Asked Sangmei. Park's hologram looked at each of them in turn, her eyes seeming to assess their character. They want to ensure that humanity stays extinct, she said finally. And they want to make sure you forget you ever met us. Daho's communicator beeped insistently. The Dominion commander was demanding an immediate response. What do we do? He asked, looking at his team, then back at the hologram of a being from a supposedly dead civilization. That, said Park, depends on whether you believe me, and whether you're willing to stand against the lies you've been told your entire lives. The massive view screen in Central Station's command center showed 7 Dominion warships approaching. Their black hulls gleamed in the light of the nearby sun, shaped like predatory fish with sharp angles and threatening weapon mounts visible along their sides. The lead ship was twice the size of the others, its front section decorated with the Dominion symbol, a spiral galaxy cupped in a 3-fingered hand. You don't understand what you've awakened, the Dominion commander's voice boomed through the communication systems. The alien's face filled a section of the view screen, gray-skinned with 4 yellow eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. That relic belongs to us by ancestral right. Surrender it immediately or face the consequences. Daho stood at the center of the command center, feeling the weight of the moment on his shoulders. Dozens of his staff looked to him for direction. He glanced uncertainly at Park's hologram, which stood beside him, glowing blue against the stark white of the station's interior. The hologram smiled grimly. They're afraid, Park said, voice calm despite the threat. Because they know what this ship can do. Commander, Daho whispered, there are 7 warships out there. Your vessel is ancient. Whatever weapons it has are still far beyond what they possess, Park finished. Watch. With that, the Valiant's weapon systems fully activated. Panels that had remained closed during their initial exploration now slid open along the hull. Strange devices extended from the ship's surface, humming with energy. On the status displays, power readings from the ancient vessel spiked dramatically. Impossible, whispered Jai-1, watching her instruments. That energy output shouldn't be possible from a reactor that size. The Dominion commander's yellow eyes widened on the screen. Power down your weapons immediately. This is your final warning. Initiating defensive measures, Park announced calmly. No visible weapons fire came from the Valiant. Instead, a subtle wave of energy pulsed outward from the ship. The effect on the Dominion fleet was immediate. Their ships began drifting slightly off course, their lights flickering. What's happening? Asked Sangmei. Targeted electromagnetic dampening field, Park explained. Technology it had been considered impossible by modern standards came online with devastating efficiency. The Dominion ships have found their communications jammed, their targeting systems blinded. They can't fire on us, or call for reinforcements. The Dominion commander's image on the view screen dissolved into static. 3,000 years ago, Park continued, as her ship effortlessly held the vastly larger Dominion fleet at bay. Humanity didn't lose our war. We sacrificed ourselves to create a stalemate. The Dominion thought they had won, but it was a carefully orchestrated deception. I don't understand, said Daho, watching as the Dominion ships drifted helplessly. Hundreds of ships like the Valiant were hidden throughout the galaxy, waiting, Park explained, each containing seeds of human civilization, genetic material, cultural records, and military technology. We made it appear as though humanity had been destroyed, while ensuring we could return when the time was right. Young Ho had been granted access to the ship's database while the others watched the standoff. His eyes moved rapidly as he scrolled through file after file of information. "Director," he called out, his voice tight with emotion. "There's evidence here that the Dominion has been systematically suppressing technological advancement of all other species since the Purge. Look at these records." He transferred the data to the main screen. Historical documents showed Dominion representatives confiscating technology from dozens of developing civilizations, including the Nari. "They've been keeping us primitive by design," Young Ho said bitterly. "Any species that approaches certain technological thresholds is either absorbed into their empire or eliminated. They've been presenting themselves as protectors while ensuring no one could challenge them. And my people are just one of many," Daho realized aloud. "All kept dependent. All told the same lies about our place in the galaxy." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Generations of belief about their civilization's place in the universe were crumbling before their eyes. One of the Dominion ships managed to restore partial power, attempting to turn its weapons toward the station. Before it could fire, a precise energy beam shot from the Valiant, slicing through the vessel's weapon array with surgical precision. The ship listed to one side, damaged but not destroyed. "I could eliminate their entire fleet," Park stated matter-of-factly. "But that's not our purpose. Humanity didn't hide away to emerge as conquerors." Daho studied the hologram's face, searching for deception, but finding none. He thought of his people's history, centuries of slow, controlled technological advancement under Dominion guidance. He thought of the restricted research areas, the technologies deemed too dangerous for non-Dominion species. Daho made his decision. "My people won't serve tyrants who've lied about history. Commander Park, how can we help?" Park's hologram smiled, a genuine expression that softened her military bearing. "There's an old human emergency frequency. If other ships like mine still exist, they'll be listening, but we'll need to boost the signal strength to reach across the galaxy. Our communication array can be modified," Jai-1 offered immediately. "I'll need access to your transmission protocols." "Transferring data now," Park replied. A stream of information appeared on G1's terminal. For the next hour, the team worked feverishly to adapt their communication systems while the Valiant kept the Dominion fleet immobilized. Finally, everything was ready. "Signal parameters set," announced Jai-1. "Ready to transmit on your command." Daho looked at Park, who nodded solemnly. "Send it," he ordered. The message was simple, a series of mathematical sequences followed by location data for Central Station. Once transmitted, the signal would propagate through space at faster-than-light speeds, reaching distant corners of the galaxy within hours. "Signal sent," confirmed Jai-1. For long moments, nothing happened. The command center was silent except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Daho found himself holding his breath, wondering if they had pinned their hopes on an empty promise. Then a single response appeared on the communication terminal, then another, and another. "Responses coming in," Jai-1 said, her voice rising with excitement. "Dozens of them, no hundreds. From all over the galaxy." The view screen filled with incoming transmission data, ships identifying themselves with human designations, each one responding with the same message. "Seed protocol active. Coordinates received. Convergence initiated. It worked, Park said quietly. They're still out there. They're coming. How many? Asked Daho, staring at the rapidly filling screen. Enough, Park replied simply. Enough to change everything. The battle was brief and decisive. The 7 Dominion warships hung in space around Central Station, their weapons powered but unable to lock onto targets. The Valiant, once thought to be nothing more than an ancient relic, now glowed with energy as its systems operated at full capacity. Final warning. Came the transmission from the Dominion flagship. Power down your defenses and surrender the human vessel. Commander Park's hologram stood on the Valiant's bridge, now fully restored to its original appearance. The dust of centuries had been cleared away by automated maintenance systems. Screens glowed with tactical information, and the ship hummed with power. No, Park replied simply. The Dominion fleet opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and projectiles streaked toward the Valiant. None hit their target. The ancient human warship moved with impossible precision, sliding between the attacks as if they were moving in slow motion. Its own weapons fired in response, precise beams of energy that cut through Dominion shields like they weren't there. 3 Dominion ships lost weapon systems in the first 10 seconds. 2 more lost engines shortly after. The flagship tried to coordinate a retreat, but its communication systems suddenly failed. How is this possible? Whispered Daho, watching from Central Station's command center. Their ships are the most advanced in the galaxy. Not anymore, said Young-Ho, who hadn't left his terminal since accessing the Valiant's database. Maybe not ever. What truly turned the tide came 20 minutes into the battle. At the edge of the system, space rippled and tore open. 3 massive vessels emerged, each similar to the Valiant but with different configurations. Their hulls bore different names: UNSC Defiant, UNSC Courage, UNSC Remembrance. More human ships, gasped Jaiwan. They came. Each vessel had been hidden for millennia, one inside a hollow asteroid, another beneath the storms of a gas giant, the third in perpetual orbit around a black hole where time passed differently, each awakening from silent waiting, responding to the Valiant's call. The remaining Dominion ships surrendered within minutes. 3 days later, the Valiant's main hangar bay had been transformed into a meeting space. Representatives from 12 different species gathered there, all members of the Galactic Research Council, all species that had lived under Dominion rule for generations. They sat in a semicircle, facing Commander Park's hologram. The Governing Council has voted, Daho informed Commander Park, standing before the assembled delegates. We formally recognize the return of humanity and stand with you against the Dominion. A murmur of agreement passed through the gathering. Species that had been enemies found common cause in this revelation about their shared history. Park nodded solemnly. For 3,000 years, my kind slept, scattered across the stars. We knew the Dominion would hunt us to extinction if we didn't disappear. So we did, but we left sentinels, watchers, waiting for the right moment to return. Why now? Asked a representative of the Loma, a species known for their caution. After so much time, why emerge now? The ship's protocols were designed to identify potential allies, Park explained. Your expedition wasn't the first to discover one of our vessels, but you were the first whose intentions were purely scientific rather than exploitative. You awakened us because you were worthy allies. Young-Ho stepped forward, datapad in hand. We've been analyzing the Valiant's records. The technology in this single ship could advance our collective civilizations by centuries. Technology the Dominion deliberately kept from us, added Jaiwan. Across the galaxy, more dormant human ships were awakening, responding to the signal the Valiant had broadcast. Each contained the seeds of human civilization, genetic material, cultural archives, and advanced technology, preserved in the hope that someday humanity could return. Reports came in hourly of new discoveries. A farming colony found a hidden bunker beneath their fields containing a human seed vault. Miners broke through to an ancient chamber filled with data storage devices. A routine stellar survey discovered a small fleet of ships drifting in perfect hibernation between systems. On the main view screen in the Valiant's hangar, dozens of signals appeared, converging toward their position. The display showed ships emerging from hiding places thought impenetrable, some hidden in asteroid fields, others beneath gas giant storms, a few even suspended in the slow time near the event horizons of black holes. They hid themselves so thoroughly, Sangmai said, watching the display in wonder. How many are there? Enough, Park replied. Enough to reclaim our place in the galaxy. Not as conquerors, but as partners. That was always the plan. The Dominion's response came swiftly. A message broadcast throughout their territories claimed the human vessels were dangerous relics, accidentally activated and now running on corrupted programming. They ordered all citizens to report any discoveries of ancient technology immediately. They're frightened, observed Daeho after hearing the broadcast. They know what's coming. Yes, agreed Park. For millennia, they've built their power on lies. They claim to have defeated us. They built their empire on the ashes of what they thought was our extinction. Now they'll learn the truth. 1 week after the initial awakening, a fleet assembled near Central Station. 27 human vessels of various sizes, each commanded by an AI, preserving the consciousness of its original commander. Alongside them flew ships from 8 different species, former subjects of the Dominion, now allies in the coming conflict. We don't seek revenge, Park told the assembled commanders. Humanity has moved beyond that. What we seek is truth and freedom for all species to develop without interference. The Valiant moved to the head of the formation. Its hull, once scared and darkened by centuries in the void, now gleamed with renewed purpose. The ship that had been dismissed as a curious relic had become the vanguard of humanity's return. As the fleet prepared to jump to its first destination, a major Dominion stronghold, Park's hologram stood on the bridge, watching the stars. "Are you ready?" asked Daeho, who had chosen to join the Valiant's crew as liaison. "For 3,000 years, I dreamed in darkness," Park replied. "Yes, Director. I am ready for the light." The fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving nothing behind but the hope of a galaxy about to change forever.